Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And check out their YouTube channel. Subscribe. Search Inside the Birds. The Eagles' injury report is out. One key name is out for the game, but two are questionable. Let's get into that right now with Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. So we now know Smith will not play, but the other two guys, kind of interesting, Adam.
Yeah, Devontae Smith never was actually at practice. So he's out, and that puts Jahan Dotson in the starting lineup at a minimum. Now, A.J. Brown did very limited work on Friday. You should know that Friday's practice, at least for the Eagles, is always an hour or less. And he has a hamstring strain. So the chances are that he's very questionable at best. But as we discussed on our Inside the Bird show earlier this week, Mike, you have to understand that if a player could go, he's going to go. There's this media myth that, they'll just hold him out. No, they're not. If he can play, he's going to play. That's the way it works. You only err on the side of caution if there's a little bit of a question whether a guy could do everything. With A.J. Brown, it's simple. If he can do everything, he plays. If he's going to be limited in the game, and it's not a playoff game, Mike, where you would just you take whatever you can get because you're trying to win or your season's over. It's very simple. If he can do everything, he's playing. Now, if he can't, we're going to see a lot of what we saw last week, a lot of two tight end sets, 12 personnel, and that's I give the Eagles credit. Yes, they should have scored more than 15 points, but the bottom line is they found a way to win. They did some different things last week, which I thought were good. They did some things like, you just don't know until you go into a game exactly what a team's going to do. But now we have the template. When A.J. Brown can't play or Devontae Smith can't play, you're going to see a lot of two tight ends.
Yeah, so Brown is questionable. Johnson, questionable. Everybody else is in except for Devontae Smith. He is officially out for the game. I know there were some other guys throughout the week. Dickerson with the wrist. Becton has the finger problem. He will play. Milton Williams on the defensive side. Darius Slay left the game last week. He is back. So a clean bill of health for the most part. On the other side, Adam, 16 play.
Yeah. Milton Williams, by the way, was added this week. We should mention he had a ankle injury previously. Now he's got a groin injury, but he's cleared. And then let me just discuss Lane Johnson. So, covering the concussion protocol now for several years, Lane was in phase 1 to start the week. Wednesday he was in phase 2, where he was allowed to do stretching, which the media saw. Thursday, he did more football-specific exercise, but he did not practice. Today, he started practicing. Now, he was limited. The Eagles list him as limited, but, Mike, he's close. He's close. He will see the independent neurologist, and if he gets cleared, that's full football activity and clearance. That's the final clearance. Now, I know this for a fact. There are cases when a player flies because he feels right and he has had no symptoms, that they set it up in Tampa where they will have an independent neurologist on Saturday. Now, their walkthrough is usually around 10:30 a.m. They usually fly around 1 o'clock out of Philly Airport. So you could actually see him either downgraded or upgraded on Saturday. I'm just giving you the scenario of how the Eagles work, studying them over 20 years and how they handle themselves, specifically with concussions. And again, it's been limited, but I have seen players get cleared on the road. It does happen. It's rare, but it does happen.
All right, we look at we know already Todd Bowles not quite like Nick Sirianni. He doesn't play as coy as Sirianni does. He just comes right out and tells you no Cansey, no Antoine Winfield Jr. They've missed the last couple of weeks, but they are out again, and they've got a laundry list of guys, 16 players in all on their injury list.
Yeah, Mike, the ones that they're not going to have, Cansey will not play. He now has had 2 different calf injuries in his career. Vita Vea is very questionable with the MCL sprain. Winfield's not going to play with a sprained foot. West Philly's own Tyke Smith, who's been their nickel back, he'll remain in that area. And Christian Isian from Rutgers, he'll fill in for Winfield once again. You know what's crazy about the Bucs, Mike? They have not had a sack since week one. They only have one sack from an edge rusher. That was Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who was a first-round pick in 2021. So it's not just the Eagles' edges, Mike. The Bucs' edge rushers are not getting a rush either.
They gave up a ton of sacks last week, by the way. Tampa did. What, they get 8 sacks last week? 2 weeks ago,
their offensive line.
Yeah, their offensive line had some big problems last week. Let's take a look at that then. If the Eagles a little healthier right now, but they got some key guys out. Give us a couple key points for Philly down in Tampa this week on finding a way to win a game on the road for the second straight week.
Yeah, look, they know Tampa very well. I mean, Mike, I mean, they've played there so many times. Last year twice. They won early in week 3. They lost in the playoffs. We know that. Let's start offensively, Mike. We know that it's going to be a heavy 12 personnel game. We don't know yet on A.J. Brown. He's got to get through tomorrow's walkthrough. But again, he's got to be able to do everything. If he's out again, it's heavy 12 personnel. You could see some 13 personnel, which by the way, they had an explosive play, more than one explosive play, playing 3 tight ends and 1 receiver and 1 back. So they'll have a good game plan. But the other thing is, Mike, and I don't quite understand this, all we've gotten is some checkdowns. Other than the one play, the wheel route to Saquon Barkley in week 1, we have not got any design plays for their backs that we know of. So that's one thing that Kellen Moore, it's my only criticism. Kellen Moore's been phenomenal so far, but that's the one thing I'd like to see. The manufacture points, you could do it by getting your running backs involved in routes. Getting Barkley involved early, where he barely involved in the first half, Mike. That surprised me, Mike. Greg Cosell brought it up. You could watch our Inside the Tape show on YouTube, and you could hear Greg talk about it. We actually have some all-22 that we put in there. And then defensively, Mike, the run D was phenomenal. Now, the Bucs running game is awful. Let's call it like it is. It's been terrible so far. One of the worst run games in the NFL. Rashad White, who's a versatile back, has no explosion. You're going to see number 7, Bucky Irving, who's wearing Leonard Fournette's old number. You're going to see him get more work this week. As a change-up. And also, who might play a little bit? Sean Tucker, who's an undrafted free agent out of Syracuse last season, who had a medical issue, which is why he wasn't drafted. But you may see him become more of a factor. But overall, the run D's got to be stout again. They don't have to play a 6-man front. Where what they did is they moved Milt Williams. He was widened a bit, and of course Zach Bond we saw, which was interesting, was playing the edge a little bit to shut down the zone running scheme. By the way, the Bucs run a zone scheme, so it's a similar run scheme, not quite the same as the New Orleans scheme, but it's all from the same West Coast tree. And then the edges, Mike, that's another thing. They've got to get pressure. You mentioned the Bucs offensive line. Luke Gadecki has a concussion. He still has not been cleared from the protocol. He's the right tackle. So Graham Barton, their first-round pick, was a tackle mostly in college. He's playing center for them. He's new to that position. Ben Bredesen came over from the Giants, who's their left guard. They didn't play well last week. And by the way, they didn't handle the blitz very well with Vance Joseph. So we know that the Eagles don't blitz, but they play line games, Mike. You're going to see some stunts up front. And that's one way to win. Now, understand, Mike, the Bucs are a heavy 11 personnel team. One thing we just got this. Jalen McMillan, the rookie receiver, their 3rd-round pick, has got a hamstring injury. Now he's questionable. That's one thing to watch. And if he can't play, it will be Trey Palmer. By the way, he could flat-out fly. He scored against the Eagles in the playoffs last year.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, Sirianni, you talk about receivers, Godwin and Evans, he was asked about the challenges that they possess. You look at Quinyon Mitchell and Darius Slay and that secondary. We'll see how they match up. That could be a big moment in this game. The Eagles secondary against those two guys and Baker Mayfield. That unit really struggled last week against Denver. I think that was a huge surprise, even to the people down in Tampa. Kind of a letdown feeling for them.
Yeah, boy, their offensive line and Baker Mayfield is so up and down. He plays a little bit. I don't know if you've heard of the term frenetic in the pocket. He does that quite a bit, and that's got to stop. But when he settles down, Mike, he throws a nice ball. He's also a smaller quarterback like Hurts. Hurts is stronger physically. They're both around 6'1". Look, the Eagles know this guy very, very well, where he played great in the playoffs and terrible. Remember, early in the regular season, he did not play at all.
Yeah, the game in Tampa last year, Philadelphia, that was almost one of their most complete games of the year, the game they won in Tampa. And then, of course, the playoff game was completely the opposite. Tampa absolutely destroyed and dominated them. But I think we both think that Philly has come a long way, or do we think they've come a long way since that game in January?
Well, look, the real Fangio is running a scheme, Mike. What a great game plan he put together. And, look, Clint Kubiak had not seen that front because you could only prepare, Mike. I just want to let people understand because there's a lot of bad takes out there in social media, particularly from the Saints fans. Like somehow Clint Kubiak's supposed to change his scheme in game because because Vic Fangio showed a front that they had not run, right? So they did it. They made a couple adjustments in the second half. They also got Kamara involved in the passing game. You saw him get Bond on that pass downfield. But you can't really do a lot in game. You see what you see, and then you adjust accordingly. You don't wait till halftime to make adjustments. That's a media myth. But you can only do so much. It's really hard to completely change what you're doing as the game's completely going. You can't completely change your offense while it's going on. That's impossible. You do it in practice during the week and game plan in the meeting room.
Adam, you brought up the couple keys to this game. One guy I want to get your opinion on this week is you said the run D must be stout. Do you like the matchup for Jalen Carter? Last week, McCoy ended up leaving the game, and then Carter really just kind of busted that game. Can Carter have a similar impact this week?
Yeah, he'll probably be my player of the game when we do our pregame show. Boy, that was something, Mike. That was awesome. I mean, that was just I'll say it again. Jalen Carter could be the best defensive tackle in the National Football League. Yes, better than Chris Jones, yet better than Dexter Lawrence if he wants to be. If he comes in with the right attitude and says, I'm going to dominate and I'm going to play my behind off, it's kind of unstoppable. And you mentioned the offensive line. This is a very beatable offensive line. That's I'm glad you brought that up. They absolutely could dominate. And, yeah, he would be my guy to watch, no question, this game.
All right, well, it's the Eagles and the Buccaneers, and, of course, you can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN as the Birds and the Bucs meet for like the 15th time, it feels like. They always seem to meet up, and here they are again. If the Eagles can get this win, 2 in a row on the road, they would have gone through that NFC South, and then they would move on to a bye week here. They got an early bye to try to get all these guys back before they have to make that long stretch. You like the early bye next week?
I didn't like it. Coaches don't. They rather have it around midfield. I've asked coaches. It's usually like around week 8 or in week 9. But, Mike, here's the great thing. They play the awful Cleveland Browns out of the bye. Cleveland's got both of their offensive tackles are out this week, and Joker, their tight ends out. They've looked terrible on offense, Mike.
I know it's funny we say the awful Cleveland Browns. At the beginning of the year, like, man, that Browns team, they got good defense. They made the playoffs last year, and it's amazing how quickly your mind just changes your opinions on some of these teams, right?
Yeah, and also look, Watson's played poorly. It's hard to win when your tackles are out. And Nick Chubb is out. Obviously, had a devastating knee injury. They got a couple defensive injuries in their secondary. Things are looking good if somehow the Eagles could win this game. And by the way, the last time I looked at the spread, it was 1.5.
Yep, it's been bouncing right around there. All right, Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds. Check out the pregame and all the coverage from the Inside the Birds guys. Download the podcast on all podcasting platforms and make sure you subscribe to their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Adam's back on Tuesday. Moshe will be here on Monday as we'll take a look back at the Eagles and the Buccaneers on next week's edition of Football at 4. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
As always, Adam Caplan here on a Football Friday edition of the Sports Bash. Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN.